I never thought my marine training would come back to me like this, right here, in my own apartment complex, surrounded by neighbors who were suddenly strangers. All of us trapped in a nightmare nobody saw coming. The world ended in 12 hours, and I was the only one who knew how to fight back. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. The sun was just starting to peek over the horizon, casting a soft orange glow across the cracked pavement of our little suburban apartment complex. Birds were chirping, the usual hum of early morning life buzzing faintly in the background. I was sitting on my balcony, sipping black coffee, watching the world wake up. It was peaceful, too peaceful. I had been retired from the Marines for 5 years, living a quiet life now. No more missions, no more orders. Just me, my dog, and the neighbors I barely knew. But that morning, something felt off. The air smelled strange, like smoke mixed with something metallic. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe someone was burning trash nearby. Then the first scream shattered the calm. It came from the building across the parking lot. A woman's voice, high-pitched and desperate. I dropped my coffee cup and stood up, heart pounding. I could hear more screams now, frantic footsteps pounding on concrete, doors slamming shut. The usual morning routine was gone. In its place was chaos. I grabbed my old Marine jacket from the chair and slipped it on. My instincts kicked in immediately. I was trained for this, situations where panic could kill you faster than any enemy. I had to act. I stepped out into the hallway, the smell growing stronger. It was acrid, like burning rubber mixed with something worse. I could hear shouting now, but it was not human. It was guttural, animalistic. I froze for a moment, then moved toward the stairwell. Downstairs, the lobby was a mess. People were running, pushing, crying. I spotted Mr. Jenkins, the elderly man from 3B, trying to help his wife, who was clutching her arm. A young mother was screaming for her kids. The air was thick with fear. "Listen up," I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise. "Everyone calm down. We need to get to safety. Follow me." Some turned to look at me, confusion and hope mixing in their eyes. I could see the question there. Who is this guy? "I am a retired Marine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know how to keep us safe. We need to move as a group, stay quiet, and avoid whatever is out there." A few nodded, others hesitated. But the screams were getting closer, and the pounding on the front doors was growing louder. Something was trying to get in. I led them to the back exit where the fire escape was. The metal stairs creaked under our weight as we climbed down, the smell of smoke and decay growing stronger. I could hear the growls now, low and threatening. We reached the parking lot, and I counted heads. About 20 people had gathered. Families, elderly, a couple of teenagers. Everyone was scared, but they were listening. "Okay," I said. "We need to find a safe place to regroup. The cars are no good, too noisy, and we do not know what is out there. The community center is a few blocks away. It has strong doors and supplies. We will move there quietly." A young man, maybe 25, stepped forward. "What is happening?" "What are those things?" I looked at him, my mind racing. "How do you explain the impossible?" "I do not know exactly, but they are dangerous. We have to move fast." We started walking, sticking to the shadows, avoiding the main streets. The city was waking up, but it was not normal. Windows were smashed. Abandoned cars were blocking roads, and the distant sound of sirens echoed like a warning. I kept scanning the streets, my Marine training telling me to watch for threats. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound could be a trap. Halfway to the community center, we heard a scream behind us. I turned just in time to see a figure lurching toward us, pale skin, wild eyes, and a mouth smeared with blood. It was one of them. "Run!" I shouted, pushing the nearest woman ahead. I pulled out my old hunting knife from my belt and slashed at the creature's arm. It hissed and stumbled back, but more were coming. We broke into a sprint, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The community center was just ahead, a brick building with barred windows and a heavy steel door. I slammed the door shut behind us and locked it. The group collapsed against the walls, breathing hard, eyes wide with terror. "We are safe for now," I said, trying to sound confident. But this is only the beginning. The room was dim, lit by a few flickering fluorescent lights. The smell of dust and old paper filled the air. I looked around at the faces. Some were crying, others were silent, processing what had just happened. I pulled out my phone, but there was no signal. No calls, no messages. We were cut off. "We have to stay calm," I said. "We will figure this out. But first, we need to secure this place and make a plan." I could feel the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. These people were counting on me. I was the only one with the training to lead them. As I moved to barricade the doors with tables and chairs, I heard a faint noise from the back room, a soft tapping. Like someone trying to get in, I froze. Was it one of us? Or something worse? I crept toward the sound, heart hammering in my chest. The last thing I expected to find was a small child, trembling and alone, staring up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Please," the child whispered, "help me." And just like that, everything changed. I never expected to find a child hiding in the dark, alone and terrified. In that moment, I realized this nightmare was far worse than I imagined, and the choices I would have to make were only beginning. The child's eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear and relief. She was no older than 7, maybe 8. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and her small hands trembled as she reached out to me. "Where are your parents?" I asked softly, kneeling down to her level. She shook her head, biting her lip. They did not make it." The weight of those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had seen loss before, but this was different. This was raw, immediate, and it was happening right here in what should have been a safe place. I glanced back at the group. Some were watching us. Others had their heads bowed, trying to process the chaos outside. I knew that bringing a child into this already fragile group would change everything, but I could not turn her away. "Come with me," I said, standing up and offering my hand. "You are safe now." She hesitated, then took it, her small fingers curling tightly around mine. I led her to the corner of the room where a few blankets and some bottled water were stored. I wrapped her in a blanket and handed her some water. She drank slowly, eyes never leaving mine. "Do you know what happened?" I asked gently. She nodded. "They came out of nowhere. People started screaming. Mom told me to hide. I stayed in the closet." Her voice was barely a whisper, but the fear behind it was loud. I looked around the room again. The others were starting to settle, but the tension was thick. Everyone was waiting for answers, for a plan. I cleared my throat. "We need to talk about what we are facing. This is not a normal emergency. This is something else." A man from the back, a middle-aged guy named Carlos, spoke up. "What do you mean? What is going on out there?" I took a deep breath. "I do not know exactly what caused this, but whatever it is turning people into monsters. They are aggressive, fast, and dangerous. We have to assume anyone outside could be infected." A woman named Lisa, holding her baby close, gasped. "Monsters? Like zombies?" I nodded grimly. "Yes, like zombies." The room fell silent. The word hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. I could see the panic starting to rise again. People were looking at each other, trying to figure out who to trust, who might already be infected. I raised my hands. "Listen to me. Panic will get us killed. We have to stay calm, stay together, and protect each other." I looked down at the child again. "We will keep you safe. I promise." The hours passed slowly. We barricaded the doors and windows as best we could. I organized the group into shifts to keep watch. We rationed the water and food we found in the community center's storage room. Every sound outside made us jump. The distant moan of the infected, the crash of something heavy falling, the occasional gunshot echoing far away. At one point I found myself alone with the child. She looked up at me with those big eyes and asked, "Will they come here?" I swallowed hard. "I do not know, but we will be ready." Her small hand found mine again and I squeezed it, drawing strength from her courage. As night fell, the community center became a fortress of fear and hope. We shared stories, tried to keep spirits up, but the truth was clear. None of us knew what the next hour would bring. Then, just as I was about to take my watch shift, a loud banging started at the back door. Everyone froze. The banging grew louder, more frantic. I moved toward the door, signaling the others to stay back. Peering through the small window, I saw a figure slumped against the door, bloodied, desperate, and unmistakably human. I opened the door cautiously. The man stumbled inside. Eyes wild, "Help me, to please." Before I could react, he collapsed. I checked his pulse. It was weak but steady. "Who are you?" I asked. "Name's Tom," he gasped. "I was at the hospital. It is overrun. You have to get out of here." I looked at the group. The tension was unbearable. Tom's eyes flickered, and then he whispered, "They are coming. And they are not just outside." A chill ran down my spine. What did he mean? As I helped Tom to a chair, I heard a low growl from the hallway outside the community center. Something was trying to get in, and this time, it was not alone. When the growling started outside the door, I knew we were no longer just hiding. We were under siege. Every second counted, and every decision could mean life or death for all of us. The growl was low and guttural, like something ancient and hungry. It echoed down the hallway outside the community center's heavy steel door. The sound sent a cold wave through my body, the kind of fear that drills deep into your bones. I glanced at the group. Faces pale, eyes wide. The child clung to my leg, trembling. "Everyone, stay calm," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Get back from the door. We are going to hold this place." I moved quickly to the barricades, checking the makeshift defenses. Tables, chairs, and heavy cabinets were stacked against the door, but I knew it was not enough. These things, whatever they were, did not tire. They did not feel pain. They only wanted to break in. Tom, the man who had just arrived, was sitting on a chair, breathing shallow. I knelt beside him. "What did you mean when you said they are not just outside?" He coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "There are infected inside the hospital. People we thought were safe. They turned. It spreads fast. You cannot trust anyone," I swallowed hard. That meant the infection was already inside buildings, inside communities. We were not safe anywhere. Suddenly, the banging on the door intensified. The steel frame shook with each hit. The growls turned into snarls. "Get ready," I said, pulling out my hunting knife and a heavy metal pipe I found nearby. "If they break in, we fight." Lisa, the woman with the baby, grabbed my arm. "What do we do if they get inside?" I looked at her, the weight of the question pressing down on me. "We do not let that happen." The group formed a tight circle, backs against the walls, eyes darting toward every shadow. The child was quiet now, clutching a small stuffed animal she had found in the storage room. Minutes felt like hours. The banging slowed, then stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Then, a sudden crash from the back window. I spun around just in time to see a figure smashing through the glass, shards flying like deadly rain. The infected poured in, 2 of them, wild-eyed and snarling. I swung the pipe with all my strength, hitting the first one in the head. It collapsed with a sickening thud. The second lunged at me, claws scraping my jacket. I stabbed with the knife, feeling it sink into rotten flesh. The group screamed and scattered, some grabbing makeshift weapons, others shielding the children. I fought with everything I had, adrenaline surging through my veins. The infected were relentless, but I was trained for this. Every strike counted. Finally, the second one fell, breathing hard. I looked around. The group was shaken but alive. "We have to secure that window," I said, grabbing heavy boards to cover the broken glass. Tom groaned from his chair. I rushed to him. His breathing was shallow and his skin was cold. "We need to patch you up," I said, tearing a strip from my jacket to bind his bleeding arm. He looked at me, eyes filled with pain and fear. "I'll have to get out of here before it is too late." "What do you mean?" I asked. He coughed again. "There is a bigger group coming. They are hunting survivors, not just infected. People like us." The room fell silent. Hunting survivors. I looked at the faces around me. Fear was no longer just about the infected. It was about other humans. Desperate, dangerous, and ruthless, I had to make a decision. "We cannot stay here," I said firmly. "This place will not hold. We need to move, find somewhere safer, somewhere we can defend." Carlos stepped forward. "Where? The streets are chaos." "The hospital is a death trap," I nodded. "I know, but I have a plan. There is an old fire station 2 miles from here. It has heavy doors, supplies, and a radio. If we can get there, we might be able to call for help." Lisa looked at me, tears in her eyes. "What if we do not make it?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "We have to try. Staying here means death." The group began gathering what they could carry, water, food, blankets. I checked my gear, making sure my knife was sharp and my jacket secure. The child looked up at me. "Will you keep me safe?" I knelt down, meeting her gaze. "I will do everything I can." As we prepared to leave, the banging started again, this time from the front door. The infected were not alone. Something else was coming. I grabbed the child's hand and looked at the group. We moved now, quietly, fast. The door burst open, and the nightmare was waiting. When the door crashed open and the nightmare poured in, every second became a fight for survival. But even in the darkest moments, hope can be found in the most unexpected places. The door exploded inward with a deafening crash, splinters flying everywhere. The infected and something else, something darker, poured into the room like a tidal wave of death. I grabbed the child's hand tightly, pulling her behind me as I swung the metal pipe at the nearest creature. The sickening crack of bone breaking echoed in the small space. The others scrambled, some grabbing anything heavy enough to fight with, others screaming in terror. The air was thick with the stench of decay and sweat. The sounds of snarling, growling, and desperate cries filled the room. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, every muscle screaming to keep going. "Move! Get to the back exit!" I shouted, pushing the group toward the fire escape door. Lisa was holding her baby close, tears streaming down her face. "We cannot leave, Tom," she cried. I glanced back. Tom was slumped against the wall, his breathing shallow but steady. I shook my head. "We have to go. If we stay, we all die." The group hesitated, torn between loyalty and survival. I knew the weight of that choice. I had made harder ones before, but this was different. These were neighbors, people I had shared quiet mornings with, now caught in a nightmare none of us asked for. The infected were closing in fast. I swung the pipe again, buying us precious seconds. "Go!" Now, I yelled. One by one, they moved toward the back door. The child stayed close, her small hand gripping mine like a lifeline. We burst through the fire escape door into the cold night air. The city was a ghost town, lit only by flickering streetlights and distant fires. The smell of smoke and death hung heavy. I led the group down the metal stairs, counting heads. Everyone was there except Tom. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pushed forward. We had to keep moving. The streets were eerily silent now, the chaos of earlier replaced by a tense stillness. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat. We moved quickly but cautiously, sticking to alleys and side streets. The child's small footsteps kept pace beside me, her eyes wide but determined. After what felt like hours, we reached the old fire station. The building was battered but intact, its heavy doors a promise of safety. I pushed the door open and ushered everyone inside. The smell of oil and rust filled the air. I locked the door behind us and bolted it. For a moment, silence, then a collective sigh of relief. We were safe. For now. I found a radio in the corner and tried to get a signal. Static, no response. I looked around at the exhausted faces. We made it, but this is just the beginning. Lisa sat down, holding her baby close. What now? I took a deep breath. We survive. We protect each other. And we wait for help. The child looked up at me, her eyes shining with a fragile hope. "Will you stay with us?" I nodded. "I will." As the night deepened, I sat by the window, watching the empty streets. The world had changed in 12 hours. Friends were lost, strangers became family, and survival was the only goal. But even in the darkest times, I knew one thing for sure. As long as we stood together, there was hope, and I was not going to let them down. Just as I was about to rest, the radio crackled to life. A voice, faint but clear, whispered through the static. "Is anyone out there? This is a safe zone. Repeat, a safe zone. Head north, if you can make it." I looked at the group, hope flickering in their eyes. Could this be the beginning of rescue? Or another trap? Only time would tell. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe and like. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in my shoes?